2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sugar Mama's Fire Play, the podcast where we ignite your financial motivation, your financial knowledge, and your financial success so that together we can build realistic, long-term, sustainable financial freedom and independence. I am your host, financial planner Canna Campbell, and I'm so grateful that you're joining me today because this is a really important episode. You see, I've been wanting to talk to you about something that has been concerning me for years. That is, the things that really worry me as a financial planner when I look at the financial well-being of our country. So let us begin today's episode because I think you're going to find this incredibly informative. Now, everyone, before we begin, I just need to quickly clarify something. This episode is not about fear-mongering or scaring you. It's actually about awareness. It's about bringing these concerns to light from my experience as a financial planner and obviously my education. And when I say experience, I'm talking about professionally as well as personally. And I really want to bring these worries, these suspicions, these, gut feelings in my gut, I should say, so that you can too identify them if they come your way. And then, of course, because you have this awareness and this understanding, you can decide if you want to or if you need to do something about it. Perhaps navigate these risks, navigate safely around these risks, or even protect other people, and obviously protect yourself and your own financial well-being. And I really actually wish deep down that I had actually recorded this episode 3 years ago. It was one of my biggest worries actually came true. So now as I sit here, I'm hoping that in 10, 15, 20 years time, I've actually been proven wrong. These things actually never happen. But if not, instead, my hope is that you've listened to this. You've watched for the signs. You've done something about it when you've seen those signs if you needed to. So together, let's jump on and talk about my 5 financial worries for Australia. Now, as always, a quick reminder that my content, as you know, is general in nature and it's purely for educational purposes. Whilst we might be chatting about something that sounds like a brilliant idea, something really powerful that could add a lot of value to your financial journey, there actually is a chance there might be something even better you could do or something you could do in combination with it to really enhance the effect and the impact of that strategy in your life. So this is why I always say, go get financial advice, that is personal financial advice, from a financial planner and get them to create formal recommendations called a statement of advice. All right, let's get started. The things that I worry about as a financial planner for all Australians. Number 1, I worry that we are really underestimating how much we actually need in superannuation to retire. One of the biggest mistakes I see people is underestimating how much they need to retire comfortably. Many people compare their superannuation balance to the average numbers that the media put out, and they think, oh, well, look, I've got about just under or maybe even just over, what the media say is the average, so I'm doing okay. But the problem is that average doesn't necessarily provide the quality of life that you might want in retirement. And you may not actually realize that that average actually is a pretty miserable existence. People often say to me, you know what, Canna, I could easily live off $50,000 a year in retirement. But they forget about inflation. That's $50,000 today. And they forget about the rising cost of living. So, for example, $50,000 may seem like a lot of money today, but that's not going to be $50,000 in 15 years' time when you go to retire. And even if you look at a modest inflation rate of 2.5% per annum, That $50,000 means you're actually going to need close to $75,000 just to have the same purchasing power that you have today. So if you're thinking, whoa, okay, that's a lot more than I realized. And then if you're aiming for, say, $100,000 today, that's actually going to be about $141,000 in 15 years' time. And that's not even factoring any taxes. So what can you do? All right, you need to know your numbers. This is how we're going to avoid this risk. This is how we're going to create the awareness so that you actually know how much you need and you don't fall victim to other people's averages. So I recommend you use the free calculators on the Sugar Mama website to work out exactly what you need, not what the average person needs. Think about all the things that you want in your retirement, things like travel, things like wear and tear of your appliances, upgrading washing machines and fridges and dishwashers that often last 4 or 5 years if we're lucky. Things that need to be replaced, like you might need to upgrade your car, say, every 7 or 8 years during retirement. Perhaps there are some additional healthcare expenses that might be a risk for you or might something you want to be able to account for during retirement. And then round that number up by 10% to give yourself a safe buffer. As I said, awareness and then preparation here are key. Also, quickly on that note of taxes, we haven't even factored taxes into this particular income. So depending on the source of your retirement income, you'll need to potentially factor in taxes. And keep in mind, whilst at the moment, most retirees or self-funded retirees over a certain age may receive a tax-free allocated pension, be aware that legislation may change over time. So again, we really need to up the ante when it comes to working out exactly how much we need in order to have a comfortable, secure, and safe retirement. All right, number 2. I really worry that we are loading ourselves up with the wrong type of debt. Australians love their homes, and I'm in the same boat. I love my home. But with property prices being so high, most of us carry large mortgages, which unfortunately at the moment is just unavoidable. But here's the issue. We are spending so much of our incomes paying down the mortgage that we don't even leave any money left over to be able to invest for diversification and other assets that we could acquire along the way that can help build us that passive income, which obviously is the ultimate source of financial independence. Now, I am not here to say don't go and waste your money and buy a home and have a mortgage. Far from it. That is your choice, and I have a mortgage myself. I have a mortgage which I'm trying to pay off. But what I worry about is when people don't have a strategy to try and pay off their mortgage sooner or to leverage their equity within their home to actually build wealth, such as a debt recycling strategy. So, for example, using equity to invest can be really powerful when done responsibly and with the right type of guidance from a great mortgage broker and a financial planner, and even obviously an accountant there as well. Alternatively, if you do not like the sound of a debt recycling strategy, which is perfectly fine, it's definitely not for everyone because it is a high-risk strategy, you might want to think about a way to invest and pay off your mortgage at the same time. But this does need to be managed carefully and at the right time. Use the first 5 years on your mortgage if you can to make great headwind, because this is when the impact of those extra little repayments, both an extra $100 per month or $200 per week or whatever you can potentially afford, this is when you have the biggest impact in saving the most amount of time, the most amount of interest, rather than thinking, oh, okay, I'll address my mortgage reduction goals in 5 years' time. In the meantime, I'm just going to live life and love it. You've got to find that sweet spot for you where you can actually see and understand what the impact and benefit is to making those extra payments. And of course, the moment you get to the stage where you go, you know what, our mortgage is coming down quickly, I'm really proud to see the progress I'm making, perhaps now is the time to look at a regular investment strategy. And so many of these investment platforms, such as Moomoo, for example, who I've worked with previously, you can start investing with as little as $10 per week. So really make sure you have your eye over your whole entire financial situation as you pay off your mortgage, but you also have your finger on the pulse as to when it is ready and right for you to start investing so you diversify your wealth. You never want to wake up one day and go, great, I've paid off my home, but I'm not going to retire, but I have nothing else to live off than just some money in superannuation. Don't fall victim to that. So what's my key takeaway here? Well, get advice. Have a plan to try and pay off your mortgage as fast as you can. Make sure you're reviewing your strategy, your progress. And of course, make those adjustments and tweaks as required. No financial plan is set in stone and that's what you're going to follow for the next 20 years. I am constantly adjusting and changing our own financial plan because our situation evolves and changes, and things that weren't a priority suddenly become a priority. That is normal. But make sure you have a really clear understanding as to what you could potentially do within your current income and living expenses to try and make little headwinds along the way of your mortgage, and so that you can allow the space to start investing. See that toxic debt coming down, and if you can, get advice around a debt recycling strategy. Learning how to enjoy the best of both worlds, that is, paying off your home loan and also building wealth through diversified investments, is key.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app, revofitness.com.au, or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Here, if you want to avoid this worry. Worry number 3, being underinsured. So I'm talking about personal insurances here. Most Australians are underinsured, and the statistics around this are alarming. But as I said, I'm not going to be talking about scary, frightening things right now. I want to talk about awareness. Now, many people don't actually have insurance. I'm talking personal insurance, so income protection, which I think is the number one most important insurance to have. And for the record, I recommend that people are insured to age 65, not just a 2-year benefit period. There's also obviously trauma cover that pays a lump sum tax-free if you were to be diagnosed with a cancer or a stroke, heart attack, anything sort of a major medical trauma. Then there's obviously total and permanent disablement insurance and life insurance. Now, this is, in my mind, as a financial planner, completely irresponsible and dangerous not to have at least looked at these types of cover and whether they are appropriate to you. If you get sick, if you have an accident and you can't work, you might have to rely on the government or have to rely on family and friends to support you. Just jump on the GoFundMe pages and you'll see so many people who clearly didn't have insurance in place and have had to rely on donations. By having the right insurance policies in place could help you remain financially stable. And yes, I get it. We're all on tight budgets right now, and insurance can be expensive. But some policies can actually be structured through your superannuation, and you can even talk to your employer about potentially helping cover some of your insurances as part of your remuneration package. I have to say, I've seen more and more corporations actually pay for their staff's income protection, life and TPD cover as part of their overall package. So have those conversations with your boss, with your payroll, with your HR team, and see if that's something that could be factored in. So once you've had a look at your financial situation and ask yourself those questions, how long could I survive financially if I couldn't work? I had to take 3 months off work to do a special treatment. Would I be drowning in debt? Would I lose all my emergency money? Would I have to forego my home deposit savings? Ask yourself those questions. Again, this is about awareness. If your answers or solutions to these questions don't make you feel proud, don't make you feel comfortable, feel like a disaster, this is when you need to go and speak to a financial planner or an insurance broker and get some advice as to what is the most cost-effective way to protect your financial well-being with personal insurance. And I've said this before, I have all of these policies myself. I took them out when I was in my early 20s, and they are non-negotiables in our budget. We cannot afford to damage all of the hard work we've put into building our financial well-being. And I promise you this, you will sleep so much better at night. Now, another quick point I want to put in about insurance is occasionally people say to me, yeah, I thought about income protection, but if I have an accident, there's workers' compensation. Yes, you might have workers' compensation, but that only covers you when you're on your way to work or you're at work. What happens if you're in an accident on the weekend or or during the week when you're out and about doing something personal that's not related to work? Or what happens if you get sick? Yes, you might have annual leave. Yes, you might have some sick leave. You might even be lucky enough to have long service leave. But again, that can only take you so far. And trust me on this, you will sleep so much better knowing that you have some form of a financial safety net in place that will protect you, your financial goals, and of course, all your loved ones around you. So have a good, long, hard look at what you've got in place and where there are gaps, where personal insurance policies may help give you an extra level of comfort, support, and protection. Worry number 4, not having enough emergency money. And I put my hand up with this. I'm completely guilty of this from 2024. So you may not know this, but around 40% of Australians can't cover an unexpected expense in an emergency without borrowing money, either through buy now, pay later, through a credit card, or through borrowing money off family and friends. And when I had Giuseppe, my 12-year-old chocolate Labrador, got sick the year before last, I was sitting in the emergency vets and I was amazed as to how many advertisements for buy now, pay later were in that emergency room. It made me realize, wow, we don't even have money to actually be able to afford to cover, an emergency trip to the vet. That's what people are having to rely on as their form of emergency protection. And also I was reading the other day that according to CommBank, 1 in 3 Australians don't even have $500 available in a savings account. That is terrifying. Everybody needs emergency money, no matter how rich or how poor you are. Now, there is no magical formula to work out how much emergency money you need. Everyone is in different situations with different responsibilities and also different comfort levels. If I had to pick, though, a minimum level of emergency money for the average person, and this is a very loose number and I don't really feel that comfortable saying this, but I would say as an absolute minimum emergency money, it's $10,000. And even that I think is just stupidly low. But if you think, I can get away with $3,000 or $4,000 emergency money, I would be feeling very concerned, very worried as I looked at you as you were telling me this. So if you want to work out what the right amount is for you, think about your life. Think about the real risks you face. For example, you might have a family member that's not very well and needs additional medical treatment or may need to take time off from work. You might have an animal that's getting older and you know that they're going to start needing expensive medication or potentially, a life-saving operation that may not necessarily be covered by pet insurance. You might think about you've got a family member that lives overseas, or you may live away from your family. Think if there's an emergency, I'd have to take 2 weeks off work, I'd have to jump on a flight, I'd have to pay for accommodation, I'd need spending money. These are the things you need to sort of think about. Or perhaps you're self-employed, you're part of the gig economy. You don't have any long service leave, annual leave, sick leave entitlements. You're going to need a lot more emergency money than someone who has, a pay-as-you-go job and a comfortable salary with that additional security net of, annual leave and sick leave to potentially rely on to cover you for a few days. So look at the cost of things that could impact you and add up the cost of, say, 3 most expensive potential emergencies. Now, when you've added them up and looked at that total, that's a really good starting point for you to base your emergency money on. And I would strongly recommend keeping your emergency money in a separate account so that you can avoid the temptation to go and spend it or tap into it or occasionally withdraw from it for things that aren't technically an emergency. And if you have a mortgage, consider using your emergency money via an offset account or a redraw facility. So at least in the meantime, whilst there are no problems, no dramas, no emergencies, that money, that savings can save you interest and time off your home loan, whilst obviously always being accessible for you. Now, if you ever want to know how to do a budget and manage your cash flow to help build up that emergency money as quickly as possible, in the Sugar Mama Budget and Cash Flow Academy, I actually teach you and show you exactly how to do this. And I think I give you 100 different ways to save money and 100 different ways to earn extra money to help quickly boost that emergency money as quickly as possible so that you can tick that box off and go back to your other financial goals, such as paying off a home loan or investing or putting more money into superannuation. So that is a great resource for people who really actually want to get better at managing their money and actually know and understand how to stick to their budget, which is often the hardest things when it comes to budgeting. So the resource for that, the link for that is in the podcast notes. And then finally, worry number 5, and that is following advice from finfluencers. Now, don't get me wrong, I love financial influencers. I know I'm kind of fall into the basket of a finfluencer, but I'm actually a licensed financial planner as well. So these financial influencers, I think, are brilliant for motivation. They're fantastic. And they inspire you, they even inspire me, and they help you get started. But here's the issue. When it comes to strategic tailored advice, influencers or finfluencers are not licensed financial professionals. It's kind of like getting medical advice from, someone who's on a great health and fitness plan. A doctor can give you medical advice. A finfluencer can't give you personal financial advice. And many finfluencers, they share insights based on their own financial situation and goals and strategies. And whilst that transparency is incredibly helpful, it's important to understand that their situation may be vastly different from yours. For example, you might see someone promoting or talking about a particularly risky investment, like a high growth managed fund or ETF or even a stock. Now, what they might not actually share is the full picture of their financial health. That particular ETF, managed fund, or stock could actually, what you're seeing in isolation they're talking about, is really not the true picture of really what's going on. You see, they could actually have 7 or 8 other investments that they own themselves that are helping spread out their risk. And they may not necessarily have toxic debt, or they may have ample emergency savings. And they may have a really strong financial safety net in place. If you were to go and mirror their advice, that is, say, go and invest in that particular fund, ETF, or stock, without having the same financial foundations in place, you could be putting yourself into a financially precarious position. And then on top of that, following generic advice exposes you to risks that influencers don't actually know and understand your own unique goals and also your timelines or risk tolerance. So, for example, you might see a influencer talking about, an Australian share ETF. Now, there's nothing wrong with that Australian share ETF. It may have performed extremely well, and they're talking about the facts. But you may interpret that as a recommendation to go and invest in that. Now, you may not actually know that that particular ETF is a highly volatile investment over the short to medium term, and that particular ETF is for investors who have a high growth risk profile and for investors who have an investment timeline of, say, 10 years. That potentially could be the worst investment for you because you actually have a goal of say, buying a home one day or buying a home in a year or two. So thinking that influencer knows that that is the right investment for you is really dangerous and incredibly risky. And if something goes wrong where you follow that advice, you have no legal protection against that influencer. However, when you have a financial planner working with you, there is protection, there is accountability, and you can actually go to that financial planner and say, this was the wrong advice. I need help, we need to fix this, or I'm going to take this to a higher power. There is protection in place. There is insurance in place. There are policies and procedures and a whole pile of compliance work to protect you when it comes to working with a financial planner. You have none of that, no recourse, no protection if something goes wrong after following advice from a finfluencer. So how do you navigate this? Well, all right, I recommend you use finfluencers as a source of inspiration, but always back up their so-called tips with your own research and analysis. Think about what you're doing, what your time frame is, and what your risk profile is. And when it comes to those big financial decisions, such as which is the right superannuation account for you, how should you structure your investment portfolio, what you should be doing when it comes to contributing to superannuation in the most tax-effective way, that is when you've got to go and see a licensed professional. That is a financial planner and maybe even an accountant along the way too. And they'll ensure that their advice is tailored to your circumstances and your goals. And that will then give you so much more confidence, but most importantly, legal protection if something goes wrong. So there you have it, my 5 financial worries for Australia. These are the things that keep me up at night as a financial planner. But remember, this episode is not about fear. It's about awareness and empowerment. My hope is that by you knowing these risks, you'll be able to hopefully see them. Well, I hope you don't actually have to see them, but if you do see them or you see them potentially for people around you, you can help guide them, send them this episode so that they know how to take those steps, or you know how to take those steps to protect yourself, your loved ones, and of course, your financial future. Now, if any of these key points or worries resonate with you, I encourage you to not just listen, but actually to step up and take action. Whether it's calculating actually how much you need for retirement, or how much you need for emergency money, or how much you need to start investing and building diversified wealth outside of your home, or perhaps even just picking up a phone and making an appointment to go see a financial planner. Every step you take today makes a world of difference for your future. So everyone, thank you so much for listening to Sugar Mama's Fire Play this morning. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone you care about. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and make sure you're following me on Instagram. And of course, at Canna Campbell Official if you'd like to see inside my real life. Now, until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep that financial fire burning bright within. This is Sugar Mama's Fire Play.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app, revofitness.com.au, or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.